got something to say, you should hear it. Oh, I'm happy to make time for your feelings, but you have to admit I already do. Let's just break it down to you and me.
Hey everyone, I've been working on this project of fitting and installing the quarter knees on sailing vessel Ooh-Rah for the past couple of weeks now. And the reason for that is we've had a lot of inclement weather. Today it's raining, and it's Wednesday, May 4th, and it's cold, it's raw, it's around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's around 4.5 degrees Celsius or something of that nature for my metric friends. So I'm not out working today, at least not outside. I'm putting around the shop and working on editing this video so I can get it uploaded to YouTube. And so anyway, here's the video, and I've been working in between the raindrops, a day or two here and there whenever I can. Hope you like the video. Please comment in the comment section below. And hey, see you next time. It's time to make a template for the quarter knees. I've drawn a line straight across the inside of the transom as a guide, because that's where I want the quarter knee to line up. And the other part along the side panel here, I'm just going to overlap it. This initial template will give me a basic shape, and then I'll come back with the bevel gauge and I will record the side bevel and the bevel of the transom, and that'll have to be incorporated on the sides of the quarter knee. Right now I just want to get the basic shape, and it's just going to be a rough cut for now. And this material I'm using is just an old, really crappy 1/8 inch plywood that I removed from the back of a piece of furniture that somebody had thrown away, and I reclaimed the wood from the furniture. And I also saved this stuff because it's handy for making these templates. So I'm just going to trace a line on the underside. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to get the basic shape. And once I have that, I can start cutting out. I know how big to make the quarter knees, and I'm going to make them a little bit oversized anyway and sneak up on the final size when I fit them. But I just want to get a rough idea. So I've made a basic line here, and I can cut that out. I'll come back and check it, see what it looks like. Go from there. I don't need the quarter knee to be this big. I just wanted to get the basic angles and the little notch. I want to come out maybe 12 inches on each side, roughly. Doesn't have to be perfect. Make a perpendicular line up about 1 inch on each end. And again, it's not perfect, but that's fine. I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to connect those 2 points. And now I'll cut that excess off. And this is my basic template. I'm going to have to fine tune it a little. This is the top, and that's the underside. And that's going to be the basic size and shape. And normally, if you've watched my earlier videos where I've built some smaller dinghies and skiffs, you notice that when I do quarter knees and I do breast hooks and that sort of thing, I like to put a little sexy curve in there, and you know, that's all for appearance. It looks nice. It also makes it easier to hold when you put your hand on it. But in this case, this quarter knee is strictly for strength, and it's going to be underneath a deck. Will go right over the top of it. Nobody's going to see it, and it provides a solid point for I might want to mount a cleat on each side and some other hardware. So I'm not going to cut any curves in it or anything like that. Basic triangle, and the I don't have any natural knees because I like to use Hackmatack knees. I don't have any right now. I don't have any knees from white oak or anything like that. So I'm just going to take some wood, 1.5 2 inches thick, and I'm going to make sure that the grain is running across this way instead of, since I don't have any knees with a curved grain. But that'll be plenty strong because of all the other structure that goes into the boat, the way it's designed, plus the deck on top of it, and it's all, you know, sealed together with epoxy and screws and everything else. It'll be very strong, so I'm not too concerned about it. Okay, I'm going to see how this works. And it's pretty close to perfect, I'd say. It looks like it fits pretty well, so I can use that for a template. And I'm just going to check and see what it looks like on the other side. I might have to trim it slightly if it's not perfect, but I'm pretty sure it'll be close. But now, since I don't have any wood that's wide enough, I just have a bunch of scraps. I'm going to have to epoxy some together, and I can use this template to know just how wide, you know, how many pieces I have to glue together. And then I can cut out the rough shape of the quarter knee, and then of course I can cut the bevels or the angles on each edge, and check it here and see how, until I finally fit it. I'll take a little block plane and sneak up on it, maybe a power planer if I have to, if it's a way out. And once I get it fitting just like this template fits, I can go ahead and I can you know, do some pre-drilling and glue it and screw it right into place. I'll be good to go. So now that I've put those athwartship stiffeners in on the main frames, and I made the template for the quarter knees, and by the way, I did check the other side and it fits perfectly just like a glove, so I don't have to do any trimming or changing, and that one template will fit both sides perfectly. But you can see that I have the end tarps now on the shelter. And the reason for that is our weather forecast is calling for the next 5 days of rain. And rain I don't think is going to get in the boat from the sides because the sides come down kind of low and they're far enough out from the sides of the boat. But the problem is the eaves at the ends of the shelter are wide open, and the rain comes in with the wind and it would fill the boat up with water. Maybe not fill it up, but get a lot of water in it, and I don't want that. So I quit for the day and put those tarps up. And if it doesn't rain all 5 days, I'll be back out again. But this is the problem when you're building outside. You know, you have to deal with Mother Nature. You have to deal with the weather. It's just the way it is. It's Sunday, May 1st. And this whole past week has been nothing but rain and a lot of wind, and I just haven't been able to do anything outside. So this is the first day since I went out and made a pattern for the quarter knees on the sailboat. So I didn't have any planks wide enough, so I have to do a glue up. So I have 2x6, 2x4. I had scrap pieces, took my template, made sure that I had enough material there, and for both of them, and now I have to do the glue up. But I don't want this to squirm around when I clamp it up, so I have some biscuits so I can make some biscuit joints, biscuit joint cutter, and I already have these pieces marked. all I have to do now is apply the glue. Just get it all spread on here. I want to make sure that I get plenty of glue into the grooves that I made for the biscuits. And the way this works is these, if you're not familiar with biscuit joints, these biscuits absorb the glue and they swell, and it gets everything nice and tight. But I really only want the biscuits to help to locate these pieces so that they stay aligned. That's my main purpose. These are, if I didn't mention before, these are number 10 biscuits. And you can make your own if you want. They won't have the quality of being able to absorb the glue. But these are very inexpensive. You can buy them at, you know, the big box stores, hardware stores, a number of different places, woodworking stores. And we'll just make sure that it's well slathered on there. And then I can just, it'll line right up. Just make sure it's seated. And I'm going to clamp this up in just a few minutes. I'm going to do this all at once when I clamp it up, so I'm going to make sure I get this one done. I'll be back in a moment. You've already seen me do one. This is going to be the same. Okay, now I can clamp these up at the same time. Get a little of that excess glue up, saves me some work later. Just dampen up the cloth, it comes right off. And I don't really use these biscuits very often, but every now and then a job like this comes along and they're handy. I used to use biscuits more often, a lot of making some furniture and other types of work like that. So I'm going to let this glue set up, and once it is, I will unclamp it and I will cut out the basic shape for these quarter knees. I might run them through the planer first, get a nice flat even surface on both sides, and then we'll go from there. It's been about 3 hours since I clamped this up, and while it's not, the glue is not full strength, but it's set up enough where I can unclamp it, take it out. Scrape off that excess on the underside. I'll clean up this excess. It's still soft. I can get it off with a razor. And I'm just going to let these sit inside in a warm room and just let it set up for a day or two, and at least 24 hours. And then I'll run it through each side through the planer, and then I can start cutting out the rough shape for the quarter knees. Now that I have these planed and I have a nice flat surface on each side, I can put my template back on and trace it back out again. Do this on each one. It's not a simple matter now of simply just cutting it out. What I have to do is I have to get the angle or bevels from the transom as well as the side panel, because they're going to have to be cut with the proper bevels on here in order for these to fit. And it's a little bit easier if I have some material outside the line when I run it through the bandsaw than it is to try to guide the blade right up against an edge. So I'll just have to get those. In the meantime though, these little ends here I can trim off because those are just flat, straight cuts, 90 degrees, they're not beveled. And so I can cut those out, and I'll get out some of this rough stuff, and I'll make life easier. I now have my 2/4 knees rough cut. I still haven't cut the bevels yet, but this is as far as I'm going to go before I find those bevels and then do the final cutting. And then after that it's just taking a block plane and fine tuning until they fit perfectly right on the boat. And I just want to make a note here that you notice that I inverted one of them, because one is the port side, one is the starboard side, so they are going to be opposite each other. So I had to turn one over, and then I make sure I take a pencil and I mark which of the sides, which is the transom side, the side panel side, the top, which one's port, which one's starboard. This would be the starboard, this is the port. So now that I have that all marked so I don't get confused, and then I can, when I get the bevels and I cut those, I'm going to cut them in the proper angle on the proper side on each one, so I don't make a big mistake and then I have to start over again. Well, it's very windy today and I have to apologize for the wind noise. What I'm doing right now is I'm taking a nice flat level board and I'm putting it across the shear, and I'm going to use that to set my bevel gauge on. And what I'm going to do is I want to get this angle here at the transom, and I also want to come over here and I want to get the angle coming in from the side panel. I've got a scrap piece of plywood here. I'm using it as a storyboard, so to speak. I'm going to place it right here and draw a line. And I'm going to mark this as transom. And I'm going to mark this as shear. So now I don't have to carry this back. If this gets moved while I'm moving things around, I can always check it against here when I'm back in the shop to make sure that I get the proper angle, and then I can use the bevel gauge to set up the saw. So now I just have to transfer the angle from the side panel onto here and I'm good to go. I now have the angle for the side panel, and again I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to mark this as the side panel, and this is the shear. This goes across the top. Good to go. So now I put my bevel gauge against my storyboard, and I have the angle here. This is for the transom. And then what I do is I just loosen up the clamp knobs here that hold this bandsaw table flat, and I'm going to move it. I also want to raise this guide up a bit because it's in the way. Just bring it up there. I can bring it down lower later. And I want to see if I can get that angle, which is pretty tight. And it looks like I have the blade of the bevel gauge parallel with the bandsaw blade. Then I want to set the guide, but I don't want it, because of the steep angle, it can't come down too low. This is about the same thickness, so that looks like I have just enough clearance. You don't want to have too much space, because then it allows the blade to wander a bit, especially with this. This is only a 1/4 inch bandsaw blade. Preferably I should have at least a 1/2 inch wide bandsaw blade, but I just don't happen to have one. And this is what I have on hand at the moment. So I now have 1/4 knee, the starboard side. And what I want to do is I want to cut it right along this edge, my lock transom, so I have the proper angle. So I have that angle cut. This angle here also has to be cut right here on this part of the notch, but of course I'm not going in the right direction here. I'm going to have to do this with a handsaw. Now instead of setting up to cut the side bevel, since this is already set up for the transom, now I can do the other 1/4 knee. And once again, I can just cut it right across here. But since I'm in the right direction on this one, I can make a little cut right in here for that notch. Now I'm not going to make you sit through this. You've already seen me cut the first one. I'll return when I'm ready to do the side panel bevel. So once again I go back to my storyboard. Now I'm at the side panel bevel, and I made sure that my bevel gauge matches that. And again, I'm going to loosen up this guide, bring it up out of the way. Loosen up the clamps for the bandsaw table. And she's coming back down, so here we go, right in there somewhere. Not anywhere near as much of an angle. But once again, I'm going to make sure that while the handle of this gauge is sitting flat on the table, I've got the blade of the bevel gauge parallel with the bandsaw blade. Let me set the guide, bring that down to as low as I can. And so now I'm good. So I can now cut right along this edge so I get the proper angle for the side panel bevel, the way that comes in. Okay, so I also have to do the angle here in this part of the notch, and again, wrong direction, so that'll have to be done with the handsaw. But now this other side, I can go ahead and cut this one, but I can also cut that notch as well. And again, the back side will have to be done with a handsaw. Okay, this is the port side, and it almost fits perfectly. You can see that it lines up beautifully right up against the transom, and it's pretty much parallel here along the side panel, but it's not quite fitting because of the notch. You can see in the notch there, I can't hold the camera very well at the same time, but right in here I have too much material. If I take that out, this should fit perfectly. And I had the same issue on the other side. It looks like it fits just right on the other side, except for just not enough material taken out at the notch. And of course I was careful not to take out too much material. I figured I'd just sneak up on it because I want to have a nice tight fit. I don't want to have any big gaps. And of course, in this day and age, with the modern use of thickened epoxies and everything else, I could probably get away with it, but it's just me. I just like to have a nice tight fit whenever I can. So, except for just a little bit of material out of the notches, and maybe a couple of high spots here and there along the sides that I can dress up with an orbital sander and maybe some 40 grit, that's about it. There's really not much to it. I don't have any more fitting to do than that, and I can just go ahead and start installing those quarter knees. Hey everyone, it's Tuesday, May 3rd, and the weather cleared up a bit, and I was able to get a little bit work done back on these quarter knees, and well, it's still too cold for epoxy, so I haven't glued them in place yet, but you saw when I was basically fitting them, and let me show you what's going on now. Okay, so you can see that they are in place, but not permanently. Right now, port side, starboard side over there, and I have them temporarily screwed into place. I haven't glued them yet. It's just too cold for epoxy, and I'll come back and do that later. And all I did, they were almost a perfect fit. So I fit them up just by sneaking up on them a little bit using my orbital sander, and that's about all. I really didn't have to plane it, and that seemed to work pretty well. And the notches I had to cut out by hand, but that was no big deal. I had a Japanese saw, one of those back dragging saws, and there wasn't much to cut. So they're in place, and I'll come back later, and the screws are just stick screws temporarily. When I take them out, I'll glue them up in place, and I'll use the I have some long number 14 hot dip galvanized wood screws that I'll probably use, and I know they're not necessary, but I have them, and they'll give me peace of mind knowing that they're there as backup. So this is all I really have as far as putting in those quarter knees, and the quarter knees won't be seen anyway because this stern is going to be decked over, and the deck will be right over the top of those. But they're going to make a good solid platform when I go to put some hardware like cleats and so forth through bolted right through them. Okay, so that's it for the quarter knee project on sailing vessel Ooh-Rah, my 18-foot pocket cruising sailboat, and I really would like to get it splashed this season. I had to do the quarter knees first because I'm still making the hull a little bit more rigid than it was when I first took it off the strongback. I want it beefed up. I don't want it flexing because I'm going to be lifting the boat higher than it is now, getting it level, and one of the biggest operations and one of the next steps is to finish building those ballast keels or bilge keels and getting those into position, putting them in place, and getting them bonded to the boat. And that's really a big operation, especially since I'm working by myself. But stay tuned. I'm going to figure out how to get it done, and I'll show you what it is that I do. Anyway, please, like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. If you do that, helps me out a lot. Doesn't cost you a dime. And thanks for watching.